I'm Chris Francis, and I'm a third year undergraduate student at IIT Gandhinagar. For most of our history, the human population grew slowly, but with recent discoveries, the population has quadrupled in just a span of 100 years. This has led to overpopulation becoming a major concern for us today. But the population growth rate had actually peaked in the 1960s and has been declining ever since. And one of the factors that has led to this decrease in the population growth rate appears to be the improvements we made in healthcare, especially the decrease in child mortality rates. So this video discusses the relationship between child mortality rates, which act as a measure of the level of healthcare, and the population growth rate. And we also try to see where different countries lie in the spectrum. I happened to watch a video by Chris named Overpopulation in Africa, which talked about how the population growth rates are still high in Africa and the steps required to reduce it. The video said that the improvements in healthcare that we can make are one of those steps. Now we'll try to see if the data supports this. Here we have a bubble chart, and the points in this chart, see, these bubbles represent countries, and the colors are decided by the continents. So here these bubbles represent just the continent of Asia. Here we have China, which is the largest bubble here. So the size of these bubbles depends on the population. So China is currently the most populous country in this chart, and then we have India here. So the colors depend on the continent. On the x-axis here below we have the child mortality, which is the number of children less than the age of 5 who die per 1000 children. And on the y-axis here we have the population growth rate as an annual percentage. And as I mentioned, the sizes of these bubbles represent the population of all these countries. Here we can see the year over here at the bottom, and we can move this scroll bar to see how things change with time. So I'll just play it. So we can see that as the years move ahead, most countries are achieving lesser and lesser child mortality rates. The green ones here are countries from Africa, and we see that the African countries are the ones that are lagging behind, but they are also catching up with the rest of the world. And now we are in 2019, and we see that from 1962, which looked like this, where the countries were spread across and far apart, in 2019 we have come here to a state where most countries have achieved better child mortality rates. And what's interesting to note here is the fact that countries tend to move towards the left with time, which means the child mortality rates are decreasing, and once they are moved enough towards the left, they also start to move downwards, which means that the population growth rate is also decreasing. So once child mortality rates have decreased, it also leads to a decrease in the population growth rate. And in the beginning, that is in 1962, we can see that European countries, which are these orange ones, and red ones, which are the American countries, are ahead in the sense that they have a very low child mortality rate compared to other countries, especially the African and Asian countries. The Asian countries mostly lie in the middle, while the African countries are the ones lagging behind. And there's Japan here though, which is on par with the European and North American countries. So the red dots can be seen over here as well as in the middle, and that's because these ones which are doing well are mostly North American, like Canada and United States, while the ones here are Latin American, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Chile. But as time progresses, we see that the disparity between countries is decreasing, and countries are achieving a much better child mortality rate with time. Now let's have a look at just the continent of Asia. So here we can just double click on Asia. Now we have just the countries of Asia. We have China here, India. Japan is doing really well in 1962, which is the year now. And Afghanistan is the worst in terms of child mortality in 1962. And when I run it, as years progress, we see the countries coming closer together, and we also see the countries moving down, which means the population growth rate is also decreasing. So once the child mortality rate has decreased to a sufficiently low level, the population growth rate is we can observe the population growth rate to be decreasing as well. And now we have China, and now the bubbles for China and India have become almost the same size, and there are predictions that indicate that India will overtake China in terms of population. And China has really done well to reduce the population growth rate, due to their strict policies. Now let's have a look at Africa. So these green dots represent Africa, and we can see that countries like Zimbabwe, Sudan, South Africa, they're doing well initially compared to the other African countries like Sierra Leone, Malawi. And as time moves, they're moving towards the left. But the disparity between African countries is not decreasing a lot. It's kind of staying the same, but they're still, all of them are moving towards the left in general, and now they're also starting to move downwards slightly. And this is how Africa looks like currently in 2019. So we observe that the disparity between countries has decreased, and once they went to the left sufficiently enough, that is, once the child mortality rates were sufficiently low, they started moving downwards, which indicates that the population growth rate started to decrease once the child mortality rates were low enough. So what does this indicate? Like, why would you expect improvements in healthcare or improvements in child mortality, decrease in child mortality rate? Why would you expect that to lead to a decrease in the population growth rate? Because if you think about it naively, decrease in child mortality rate means that the population should increase, right? I mean, more kids are staying alive because of a decrease in child mortality. So if more kids stay alive, you would think that the population growth rate should increase. I mean, that's what one could think naively, but the bigger picture behind this is the fact that the numbers we see here are made up of people. So once people have a sense of belief that their kids are less likely to die before reaching a certain age, they're more likely to have lesser number of kids, because the kids they have are more certain to live to a full age. So now they don't need to have too many kids. So that's one of the reasons which has helped to decrease the population growth rate. That's one way of reasoning. And another is that along with the decrease in child mortality, there have been other improvements in technology, other uh, cultural changes happening due to globalization, which have also led to a decrease in the number of kids per family and hence contributed to a decrease in the population growth rate. But we here with this data we can also kind of be sure that improving healthcare is a good way to decrease the population growth rate and hence prevent the adverse effects of overpopulation. So let's just have a look at Australia, which hasn't gone through much of a change. And then we have Europe, which again was doing well, and since Europe already had a decently low child mortality rate, they have mostly gone down. That is, their population growth rate has gone down, decreased. So I guess this was insightful, and thank you.